Welcome to another edition of the Personal Transformation Experience podcast. My name is David Brand.
And I'm Maureen Brand.
And we created this podcast to share reliable information and resources combined with reflections on our own lived experiences with the goal of inspiring others to achieve optimal outcomes in all areas of their lives, including relationships, physical and mental health, and other relevant topics. So today's topic is very personal to me, to both of us actually, and it's based on a decision I recently made to no longer drink alcohol as we've headed into the new year. And I'm going to give 5 reasons why I've decided to no longer drink alcohol today. But first of all, why talk about this now? And I think today is January 1st, is the day we're recording this. And with the new year comes a new start for many people when it comes to alcohol consumption and many other things. Alcohol consumption is one of those things. Right. In fact, you've probably heard of dry January. And so here we are. And dry January is actually a really recent heading, for this idea that people are going to go 1 month abstaining from alcohol. And it's rooted in the story of Emily Robinson, who lived in the UK, or I think still does. And she didn't like running, but she wanted to start running. So she decided she was going to train for a marathon. And one of the things she was going to do to train was to completely abstain from alcohol for 1 month. So she did this in January of 2011. She did it again in 2012. Then people started asking her, like, how's it going? Why are you doing that? And then the following year, she actually joined this organization called Alcohol Change UK. And this whole dry January movement then took off from there.
Interesting.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I looked that up myself.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I didn't know that either.
I thought it was an American concept. And here it was British all the time, right? So I think, we can establish that many people are adopting an alcohol-free lifestyle these days.
Yeah.
Not just for January, but throughout the year.
Right.
And so I've recently made that decision too, for personal reasons. And as I said at the onset, alcohol is deeply personal. Alcohol use, rather, is deeply personal for me, as I know it is for you.
Right. Yeah, I stopped drinking many moons ago. I don't drink at all.
My mother drank heavily during periods of my childhood, and there was excessive drinking in the home when I was younger, parties, things like that. And I actually learned to binge drink at 15. And I'm not proud of that fact, but that's the truth. So I've been drinking a very long time. And I think given the relationship I had with alcohol very early on and how much I misused and abused alcohol, I find it to be a miracle that I'm here today to talk about it. And I love to joke around with people in my inner circle that I have 9 lives like a cat.
Yeah.
And I'm probably on life 7 or 8 right now. I could tell you some stories.
Yeah.
I
think many people have had their experiences with alcohol, especially when you're younger and you're growing up and you're, out with friends and you become of age. Everybody likes to drink, and alcohol is like a big deal, and it's a reason to get together and party. It's social. It's political. It's, everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but most times you go out to dinner and everybody's drinking cocktails. I mean, it's something that people do. It's a very socially accepted thing. And, I think when you're young, you don't realize how quickly your ability to make good decisions goes away as you become a little more impaired. So you'll have 1 drink, oh, you're feeling buzzed. 2 drinks, oh, you're feeling tipsy. Now you're, and then 3 drinks and you're like, I could have more. Usually it's around 3 drinks. Depending on the person, but for me, if I got to the 3rd drink, I was going to go downhill if I didn't stop. By the 3rd drink, I needed to start drinking water or something else before I continued. Yeah. And I think that's how we get in trouble.
I agree 100%. And really, when you think about it from a societal perspective, we kind of glorify drinking. And I was recently reading that 85% of people, and that may just be in this country, currently drink or have had a drink, right? At some point in their lives. That's most people. And then you think about the song that spent the most weeks in #1 in 2024. It's called the Tipsy Song.
Yeah.
Right? It's about drinking Jack Daniels, right?
It's a great song, yeah. And again, there's a great, everybody like, oh yeah, they hear the song, everybody gets a drink and drinks to it, People celebrate events with alcohol, let's have a drink to that. I mean, college, oh, we'll drink to this, let's drink to that. It's always like, it's, you can find plenty of reasons to drink.
And think about, like you said, the peer pressure too. Mm-hmm. So if you go to college and you're 18, you're 17, and you get invited to a party, if you were to go to that party and say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't drink, you're going to get made fun of probably. You're going to be ostracized.
Well, I mean, everybody's going to be drunk, and it's not so much you're going to get made fun of. I don't know if at that age people are going to, start chastising you for your choice not to drink. However, you're going to be at a party where everybody's drunk, and you're going to be, how is that fun? I don't enjoy it. As a matter of fact, I have a really hard time, we'll get into this later, when I have to go somewhere and people are drinking and they're getting drunk, and I'm sitting there like, this is not fun for me at all. I can't even have a conversation because these people are acting like, a bunch of hyenas because they're drunk.
Well, I have to tell you, I have a 19-year-old in college, and we went not too long ago. She wanted us to tag along to a frat party, and we went, and she saw the way there was just people were vomiting outside and everything. She's like, let's go. I mean, she was clearly like, I don't want to be part of this, and I'm not saying she doesn't drink, or I'm not talking about that, but even at her age, she can recognize like, this is over the top, right? And I don't need to be part of it. And I hope that she's maintaining that when I'm not around, but it was good to see because, and I was there with her mother also. And we were both like, glad we never did this, right?
Yeah.
Well,
right.
I didn't do it at college. I did those things outside of college. I didn't go to college. I was 27. By the time I went 27, I was past binge drinking, but I could really literally count on one hand the amount of times that I got drunk to the point where I threw up. That's good.
It was very few, only because I didn't like it.
Right.
Obviously, you don't like it. And I felt so awful. And drinking, no matter how much I drink, I get a headache. Like I'll get a migraine. So that kind of deterred me. Plus, I was always athletic. I've always exercised, run, been in some kind of,
And crazy I did too.
Sport.
I was in track in high school.
Yeah. So that kept me from, for me, it wasn't exercise, wasn't for competition or sport. It was for therapy. Like I needed to do it so that I can keep my head sane. So I had to run. And if I couldn't run, if I couldn't do that, I'm like, I couldn't let alcohol get in that way, in the way of me having my therapy, like my 10-mile run, because then I couldn't function. Right. So for me, the consequences of drinking were so much greater than not drinking because I needed to do this thing for myself.
Yeah, that's a good point. It
for
took
anxiety.
you away
I had
from
severe anxiety.
Doing something important for you, yourself.
Right. And the anxiety, the only thing that could quell my anxiety that was running or exercising in some way, swimming, running, like something like that. So alcohol, I just wasn't something. I mean, that's not to say I didn't drink. I did. But I could never drink really in excess. Like I only did it a few times, and I was like, mm-mm.
So we're going to talk about my first reason for giving up alcohol right now.
Yeah.
And this one was kind of the nail in the coffin. So I'm not sure many people have heard about atrial fibrillation.
AFib.
Yeah. And there's different types of AFib. Mine is kind of the one where it kind of comes and goes. I don't have it constantly, and I'm actually in a very low dose beta blocker right now to control it. But when you have AFib, your heart may go into periodic, short-term, long-term, couple minutes, a couple hours, where the heart rate is highly elevated for you and erratic, right? Maybe beating irregularly. So, the first time I really noticed this, because thankfully now that we have these watches, we can go in there and we can do our own ECG and look at our heart rate and monitor our heart rate while we're sleeping. Thank God. Sometimes it's too much awareness, but in this case, it was helpful, right? Because I had that episode in January. I worked out and all of a sudden my heart shot up to like 140 and wouldn't go down. And then it did finally after about 5-10 minutes. And then eventually I ended up having irregular heartbeats, what they call PACs and PVCs. And honestly, I don't know right now, like you, if that's from the alcohol or it's from COVID, because I know a lot of people have had COVID that, I don't know what causes what anymore.
Well, I will say I don't drink and I get them. And I got them ever since I did have COVID after the second time.
Right.
So, yeah, I think, and when I went to the doctor, because I was trying to get my physical fitness back, I was struggling. I couldn't even like walk. I mean, it was hard. And I was like, what's going on? He checked everything. He did all kinds of tests, echoes, everything. And he said, so your heart is atrophied, the muscle's atrophied, but it's not damaged.
Right.
You have to work on getting it strong again. And that often happens when you have a virus like this and you are sedentary. I mean, literally 2 months, like I didn't really work out because I couldn't.
Yeah, we were both in that situation.
So it really atrophies quite quickly. And I believe it's from the COVID. I believe that because I never had PVCs or PACs or anything like that before.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too off topic in delving into it, but some people argue it's the vaccines that cause heart issues. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't really know.
Viruses will do that though.
But alcohol use can also cause atrial fibrillation.
That's true.
So I don't really know, but what I do know, right, is that when I had 2 very severe AFib episodes, the one in September and then the other one in early November, both of them were situations where I had large amounts of alcohol within 24 hours of the event. As we know, that one in September, I was at the doctor. Thankfully, I had a already scheduled appointment. It took 2 hours. I took a beta blocker and finally calmed down. Yeah. The other time, I was away at a conference and it shot up into the 160s.
Oh my gosh.
And it was there for an hour, and I was at a hotel, and they had to call an ambulance. They couldn't take the risk of
that was awful
of not bringing me to the hospital. And finally, that one went away on its own. But that one, I had a few beers the night before at a pub in the hospital, because it just felt good. I wanted to sit down. I want to have that beer, and I got talking to another gentleman who owns a business in another country, and I was eating something, and I was just like, it was good.
In the hotel.
Yeah.
Oh, because you said hospital.
No, I went to the hospital.
After
well,
that,
I guess I mixed things up, but I went to the hospital obviously the next day because about within 24 hours, I developed severe AFib where my heart rate it got as high as 164. Now, for some people, those heart rates are always in the low 100s. That may be fine, but my heart rate at rest is 50.
Yeah, you have a very low heart rate.
So my heart rate's 110, 120. That's AFib for me, basically. And I think more clinically, they look at AFib over 120, but I was consistently over 120 in these 2 long-term episodes I had. And thankfully, I've only had 2 episodes where it's more than an hour, but I have frequent episodes where it's a couple minutes a week, even with the low-dose beta blocker. So what I had to face there is, and so there is information here now that we know. Right, there are studies that have been conducted, and I've got this all sourced. And when the podcast, well, by the time you're reading this, it is posted or watching this. But in the notes of the podcast, there's going to be links to the studies. Right, all this stuff I'm talking about here, I didn't make it up. I mean, it's my personal experience with also, as we said at the onset, reliable information. We're gonna cite our sources. Yeah. Right, but these are reputable medical studies and journals and things. We're not talking about things I found on Instagram. So, there are studies that have shown that people who haven't had AFib and are excessive drinkers eventually get AFib. And second to that, when they already have AFib, when they have periods of drinking alcohol, it triggers AFib relatively quickly. So I have realized now that
it really exacerbates
alcohol, right? So it can cause it, number one.
It makes it worse.
Long-term alcohol use of your life can lead to AFib, especially if you're predisposed. My mother had AFib.
Yeah, see, nobody in my family, I don't think,
but she didn't get it until she was in her late 60s, right? I'm younger than that, so I got it earlier. But I've been drinking consistently in my life since I was 15, right? Where she had periods where she didn't drink at all for a while. I'd never really had that. But so not only did it may have caused it or brought it on, it's exacerbating it, to your point. So every time it was triggering it. So I finally had a look, and then the doctor, he's like, well, I can't put you on any more beta blockers. Your heart rate is too low when you're rested. It was going down to 40. He said, but maybe we'll do an ablation procedure. We're going to go in and we're going to scar the heart tissue.
Yeah.
But I read on that there's tremendous potential side effects like blood clotting and other things from ablation. And even so, if you drink after the ablation, you can still get AFib. So I told the doctor, I said, let's just put a hold on that. I said, if I don't need to drink so bad that I need this procedure, and then anyway, you're telling me if I get the procedure, I may not be able to drink anyway. So what is the point? Why? Let me stop drinking alcohol and see what happens. I'm right. And so when I've been doing this in little doses, but now we're January 1st. I'm hard and firm, no alcohol. But when I went a week or 2 weeks without drinking alcohol, I didn't have any issue.
Well, I will say that there are times when I like tried the wine, like I'll have a sip of wine or whatever, like literally a sip. I can feel my heart rate shoot up as soon as I consume it.
That's common though, because everybody will have an effect from drinking. I
my heart rate. Yeah.
It will make your heart rate go up.
Yeah.
Not necessarily AFib where your heart rate's going to
but my heart
become
rate
erratic
becomes
and
more rapid.
140, but it will increase the heart rate, right? So it's, and then the fact if you're taking a low dose beta blocker, you're lowering your blood pressure, and then you're drinking wine or beer, whatever, it lowers your blood pressure. You're just creating a very bad situation.
Yeah, so scary.
For yourself. So, one thing I wanted to share is that there's an observational study out there, tracked people over an average of 14 years and found that even one single drink a day, one glass of wine, beer, or shot of whiskey, gin, or other spirits, was linked to a 16% higher risk of developing AFib compared with not drinking at all. So there is causation here. We're going to talk about the importance of delineating between causation and association in a little bit. And then there was another study that showed a substantial reduction in alcohol consumption by patients that already had AFib. So they had symptomatic atrial fibrillation like me. So a reduction in alcohol consumption was associated with a reduction in the recurrence of AFib and a reduced proportion of time spent in atrial fibrillation. And I can testify to that. When I backed off alcohol and didn't drink for 2 weeks, I did not have any AFib episodes more than a minute. So I didn't have frequent episodes. I didn't have 2-hour episodes. So then the conclusion from the study is that regular alcohol consumption is a potentially, because not everything's guaranteed or certain, it's a potentially modifiable risk factor for AFib, atrial fibrillation. In this trial involving regular alcohol drinkers with AFib, they randomly assigned to the abstinence those patients randomly assigned to the abstinence group decreased their drinking from about 17 drinks a week to 2.
The abstinence group.
Yeah. Well, because they didn't say they went to 0. They went from 17 to 2 a week.
Oh, okay. Right. So they just abstained.
And they had a reduction in both the AFib burden and risk of recurrence. So that when I saw that, and I say, okay, right, and especially when you're talking about you're going to stick a needle in my heart and scar it, and I'm like, ugh, why would I intentionally do that if stopping drinking solves the problem?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's what I told her. I don't need to drink bad enough to go have the ablation. Right?
No, right.
So screw it. I'm not. If that works, and he agreed with me. He's like, I don't want you to have the ablation if you don't need to.
Yeah.
And one thing I will say is that I wished when I was first diagnosed with AFib almost a year ago, the doctor had said to me, hey, I just want you to be aware that there are studies that link alcohol consumption to AFib.
Yeah.
I found that on my own.
Yeah, no, that would have been helpful.
I love my heart doctor. I love my cardiologist. But he was not the one who introduced me. I introduced that study to him.
Yeah.
So, and he's a young cardiologist, right? And so I was I was kind of puzzled by that. And, hopefully maybe now because he and I discussed it, but that's why we're doing the podcast, right? Because if you're out there and you have AFib and you're drinking, you're like, I can't get AFib, or maybe AFib runs in your family. You don't have diagnosis yet. We're trying to give you something to think about that you might not get from a doctor. I didn't get it from a doctor. Yeah,
it's interesting because I was listening to Peter Attia. I think it was like a year ago. He was doing a podcast, and he just said, he's like, there is no safe amount of drinking.
Well, we're going to get to that.
Yeah.
That's the second.
I'm looking at the second one.
That's my second reason. There is no safe amount of drinking or amount of safe drinking.
That's not to say, he said, even I indulge every once in a while. I do drink, but really there's no safe amount of drinking. No. So this is to number 2.
Absolutely. Yeah. So studies now have shown that any amount of drinking increases the risk of multiple cancers, especially breast cancer and colorectal cancer.
Yeah.
As consumption goes up, the risk goes up for the cancers. It's a tiny risk, but if you said, hey, your risk of getting cancer is 0.1, but keep drinking, it'll go up to 2%. I'll take my chances. And you may say that, right? I'm not. Me personally, screw that. No, I'm not going to do anything that's going to increase my risk. I want my risk for cancer, any dying of a heart attack, whatever, be as close to 0 as possible.
Yeah, I don't
want to do anything that takes it away from the 0.
Got into the alcohol thing because I don't like feeling buzzed. I don't like feeling like I don't have all my faculties. I don't like that. I feel powerless and vulnerable, and I don't like that.
Funny story about your drinking is we used to go out and like a special event, and you would order like a really nice cocktail, and you would say it's too strong, I can't drink it. But I don't like to waste anything, so I'm like, okay, well I have to drink it then. So I would drink my drink and your drink.
I know that.
So now neither of us are drinking, so we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah,
there's no wastefulness.
Yeah, I would have a couple of. I would have a nice cocktail, but I would be like, I'd get through 3 sips of it, and be like buzzed and done.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't do this
And
anymore.
I'm like, well, you can't throw away a good drink.
Well, God forbid, right?
We spent $25 in that drink. I mean, a good drink's not cheap. I went to Chicago last
Alcohol's
year.
expensive.
I went to Chicago last year, and a vendor was paying, and they took us out for cocktails.
Listen, think about all the money you'll save.
They bought me an old fashioned for $50. It was $52.
What?
Yeah, one drink, $52.
I remember one time I was at the top of the Empire when it was still there, and I was with a good friend of mine, Soteria, and we ordered cocktails at the time, and they were like $25 champagne cocktails. I thought that was ridiculous.
We didn't even get into that. That's a good reason. I'm going to save money.
Save tons of money.
We didn't even get to
We should just bank
We
it
talked about health benefits.
and take ourselves away.
Yeah, there you go. Now, if you drink mocktails, and we're going to get to that in a moment, they're
Yeah.
not cheap either, but they're cheaper than a drink.
Right.
But finally, wrapping up my reason number 2, there's no amount of safe drinking. The evidence indicates the more a person drinks, particularly the more over time, the higher the risk of developing an alcohol-associated cancer. So that's out for me. Third, a myth is being debunked right now. That drinking alcohol, the conventional wisdom, and actually I think it was a study in like 1990, it was commissioned and it came out of France, that said wine drinkers have improved cardiovascular health. But more recently, there's been no research that's proven a cause and effect link between drinking alcohol and better heart health.
Right.
Now, is it true that components in the red wine, such as the flavonoids and other antioxidants, can potentially reduce heart disease risk? 100%.
Yeah, drink grapefruit juice.
Right. Those things that are found in red wine are also found in
Have a
other
grape,
food.
right.
Grapes, red grape juice, or blueberries.
Right.
So, true, somebody who drank red wine got the antioxidants,
And
but
the
they didn't need to
flavonoids,
drink the wine because the other implications of drinking wine are negative.
Right.
Right.
That's right.
So it's kind of like putting something very positive and wrapping it around something negative. Right. And, and then only looking at the positive. So, and so the American Heart Association today does not now recommend drinking wine or any form of alcohol to gain health benefits.
Yeah.
So there is no reputable study today that is out there that's saying that drinking any type of alcohol leads to better health outcomes.
Correct.
Are there connections between healthy people and drinking? Yes. And let's talk about that in a moment. The other thing that to me, and this study, to me, this was the pivotal study, is that drinking alcohol, even moderately, actually takes time off your life with each drink.
Right.
It
Like a
doesn't
day or
prolong
something.
your life. It takes time off your life. So, and what is the new research that's come out? I think one of the best studies is this one that I read from the Journal of Studies on Alcohol and Drugs. It was published a year ago. Why do only some cohort studies find health benefits from low volume alcohol use? So basically, it looked at people who drink, but it looked at other factors, right? So, and this is where I want to talk about the difference between causation and association, right?
Yeah.
So, people who drank in the study also were healthy people, right? And so people drew a conclusion from the study that they were healthy because they drank and because they drank red wine. Right? Like you've heard of the Blue Zone diet and the Mediterranean diet, right? And alcohol is usually a part of that. But they're so healthy because of the other aspects, right? Of the exercise and eating things rich in omega-3s and things like that, right? And the funny thing is, maybe they're living longer than other people. So let's say somebody on the Mediterranean diet who does drink wine with dinner every night lives to be 75 or 80. What if somebody who's on the Mediterranean diet never drank at all? Do we do that study? Maybe they're living 5 years average longer.
Or 10.
Right? So we
Depending
don't
on how much
know.
you drink, yeah.
Right. And that's, and I think it gets hard,
I mean,
especially.
imagine you can add a decade to your life from not drinking.
Right.
Would you do it? I would.
Well, what if you're taking a decade off by drinking?
Well, that's
Well,
exactly.
it's the same, yes, either way, right? same math. But when you're a kid, when you're 17, the last thing you're thinking about is, I don't know, am I going to live to 80 or 90, right? And so I think that gets tough. When you start getting in your 50s and beyond, I think then it becomes super critical. You start looking at, what have I done, right? Hopefully sooner. Hopefully you come to that sooner.
But you have to also remember there are these anomalies. There's like people
Right.
out there that, drink bourbon every day and die at 100.
Well, there's genes.
Right,
There's
there's
genetics that factor in. But we're looking at over time and
Right.
longitudinally across a group of people
The
that are
average,
studied.
yeah.
Right? If hundreds of people or thousands of people are being studied, those types of effects get smoothed out, right, in the data. So, but it's just, when I read that article, and now, they're showing... One study that had adults age 60 found that even low-risk drinking was linked with a higher death risk among older adults who already face health issues. So
What's low risk drinking?
So maybe having no more than one a night, or maybe
One a
2
night
or 3
is
a
low
week.
low risk.
That's
Like one drink a day.
yeah.
That's a lot of alcohol. I mean, that to me is, I don't know, to drink every single day, even if it's one drink. That's
So for me, I personally,
I thought you were going to say once a week.
I personally have seen enough evidence.
Yeah.
And what I want to show the audience today is, guess what? What does this look like to you, right?
Yeah, it's a yeah, it's
So
a mocktail.
This looks like a cocktail, but this today, this is an alcohol-free drink. This is my attempt at old-fashioned using Ritual Zero Proof whiskey alternative. I will tell you, I've also tried the Spiritless Kentucky 74 non-alcoholic bourbon in an old-fashioned. I like that and prefer that a little bit better. But I'm sitting here, guilt-free. I don't have to worry about my AFib. No, there's some very, very small amounts of sugar in that. The
What
way
does it
I
taste
make
like? Does it taste like?
You want to try it? It tastes like medicine.
No,
I like medicine.
No, I don't like medicine.
The other one that I've indulged in is the Heineken Zero. So for a zero alcohol beer,
right.
I really like the Heineken Zero.
Yeah, it's not bad. I've had
Athletic
that. Yeah.
is another beer that's out there. I will say I've tried zero alcohol wine, and no, that
tastes awful. Yeah,
it tastes awful. So I'm not doing that at all. So let's pivot a little bit. I think now I've been clear about the 5 reasons that made up my decision. Because like I said, the other 4 were health, and then 5th I said, hey, if I can still have what looks and feels and tastes like a drink to me, then that's the icing on the cake, right?
Yeah.
I would have done everything even if it weren't for the fact that I could have this drink. But let's talk a little bit more about alcohol assumption affecting our close relationships. So for you, I know even my drinking, that's been a trigger for you also.
Yeah, I don't. Well, because of the way I grew up, right? So I grew up. My dad was an alcoholic, and pretty abusive, and
Right.
so I grew up. It was a little scary. It was very scary. I mean, it was not. I didn't feel safe most of the time, especially when he was home and I had to be alone with him. It was just an unsafe feeling. I never really felt safe or protected. So growing up like that, it was very hard, which is probably why I made the choices I did in my own life, because I didn't want to be around people who drank, and I got very uncomfortable with people who drank. Like, I didn't like it, and I didn't really stay around those kinds of people. I just felt like things were too out of control, and it was scary for me, and I felt unsafe. And so, we had an experience with when we went to go visit your daughter in school, and it was parent weekend, the first parent weekend, and you were partying with your daughter and you were drinking and you got drunk, and it made me really uncomfortable. I mean, it was, it made me very uncomfortable. Like, I felt like I was scared. I was frightened that something was going to happen to you. I was frightened that we wouldn't be able to find our way back through the campus, like to the car. And then I was just frightened. I was afraid. It made me really upset, and I didn't like it. And I was like, we're not doing this again. Like, I'm not coming down here if you're going to drink. Like, I can't handle that. And it was a really scary experience. And, most people there were drunk. Most people were drinking the whole time, and everybody's like, it's fun, it's harmless, it's this, it's that. Well, not for me. Personally, not for me. I don't like it. I don't like it being around people who drink. It makes me very uncomfortable. And and it's because of the way I grew up. I didn't grow up in a good environment where I felt safe. And, my dad was abusive when he drank. And so it was a scary thing. I have a lot of trauma around that. And he was drunk, he was an active drinker up until he went into a nursing home for dementia.
Yeah. So he had alcohol-induced dementia. And so we didn't talk about that as a health risk. Now, dementia doesn't run in my family, but it runs in yours.
Yeah.
And so, again, when you talk about something exacerbating
Actually, dementia doesn't run in my family. He had alcohol-induced dementia.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought there was someone else
there
had
was
dementia.
No genetic. No, there was no genetic component. It was because he drank that so much that his brain kind of got saturated, just like your liver would. I can't imagine what his liver looked like.
Well, that's the other thing. We didn't talk about liver, but my liver's okay. But there are, I think you can search that for yourself. There's a lot of health risks associated with, obviously we talked about cancer risk.
And he was a diabetic.
He was a diabetic. He shouldn't have been drinking at all.
No. He was able to control it through diet most of the time, but obviously, I don't know. He took medication. He took pills, not shots. He didn't have to do shots. He had to do like some kind of medication he took to help it, which I guess allowed him to drink as much as he did, because he took oral medication. But yeah, it was definitely traumatizing, and I don't like to be around people who drink.
No, and you were married to someone who drank excessively also.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother podcast.
So then, you've had to endure that
it was familiar.
trauma a few times. And going back to my childhood too, my mother didn't keep us safe. And I do think it was connected with the drinking, because when I was a teenager in high school, she would go out, she had a friend, and they would go out and they would get drunk. And next thing I know, she'd be bringing a guy home that she'd never met before. Right. And you think about it, I was 15, my sister was 10. And she's bringing a guy home that she just met at a bar because she was drunk. And so you talk about drinking inhibiting your judgment, but you have a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old home, and you're bringing a guy you've never met into the house.
Yeah, it's scary.
And you think about some of the stories you hear about on the news and so forth.
Yep.
And again, I think about the 9 lives analogy.
It created such an unsafe situation.
Yeah. And this is why I used to get angry later in my life, because my mother would say, well, I did the best I could do. I'm like,
did you really?
I don't agree. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Did you really?
But if you brought a strange man into the house with minor children, and then you went to sleep and didn't know what they were doing, no, you weren't doing the best that you could.
Right.
You went out and got drunk. You got wasted, and no, she didn't do that obviously later in life. This was younger, but she never apologized to me. Mm-hmm. She never said to me, I'm sorry that I made you feel that way or create a risk. All she did was defend it and said, well, I was doing the best I could. Or what about your father? What was he doing? I'm like, that's irrelevant.
Right.
That was under your control.
Yeah.
You put us in danger. Period.
Right. Well, that's
there is no amount of discussion. She's dead now, right? There's no amount of discussion that's going to dissuade me from believing that you didn't keep me safe. So just like you're talking about with your father.
I didn't feel safe.
He said to you, well, I was doing the best I could do. I was trying to be a police officer. And I hate, when somebody makes excuses for their behavior.
Right. Take some accountability.
Right. Like, you're right. Say, that was fucked up. I shouldn't have done that.
Right. You did it. Period. End of
story. I'm sorry
story.
I did that. I'm sorry that I created that situation. Not, I'm sorry you feel that way, right? I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I didn't keep you safe.
Right.
I've had to repair. This is called repair, by the way. Mm-hmm. And I've repaired, and probably not enough with my own children, because there's things I've done that I didn't listen to them. I didn't take them seriously enough. I didn't show that I cared or understood enough, or, and I realize it. And it's okay for me to say, you know what? I had an opportunity to do better.
Right.
And I didn't.
Well, alcohol, what were we watching the other day? You were doing research on this podcast, and there's like I don't know if it was a documentary or something came up on the screen that talked about how children of parents who drink, even if they're just socially drinking, the kids are watching that,
Yeah.
and it makes them anxious and uncomfortable. They don't feel
We
good
are a
about
model
it.
for behavior, right?
Right.
And so they see that and yes, they're probably not going to feel comfortable if they're really young, but then later,
Doesn't matter what age, they still see their parents drinking and they don't like it. I don't remember exactly what it said. I wish I could remember, and I wish I would have like really looked at that, but it is something that we need to consider, because I don't think a small child watching their parent drink alcohol is a good thing.
but I did it the whole time, right? Whether it was coming home from work and having a beer with dinner or whatever, or having a few, right? Or the time, like you said last year, the fact of the matter was, my daughter was 18, was a freshman at college, and I got drunk in front of her.
Yeah.
Right. Now she did too.
Yeah, you were both really drunk.
But that I need to know better, right? And it's my responsibility as the parent to do better.
Yeah.
So, and I get that.
Yeah.
And that's not the model. That's not the model I want to be. I don't want to say that's not the model I should be. That's not the model I want to be.
Yeah. And it's funny because I know you usually like to come home and have a drink, and I never liked it. I remember pushing back on you about it. Like, do you have to really do that? How necessary? Like, I would give you a hard time because it made me uncomfortable. But then I pulled back, and I was like, well, maybe it's just my own trauma, and I shouldn't be so, hyper whatever about it. Like, I didn't like it. But, I didn't. And then I would smell it on your breath, and I couldn't. Yeah. Would you go out, drink? You would go out, you'd have a glass of wine with dinner. Even if you only had one glass and you were out to dinner for 3 hours, I could still smell it. And I was still like triggered from it.
Yeah.
And those are my triggers, and I get it. But I think that when it comes to something like that, it's not necessary.
Right. There's no
reason
when
for
you
it.
look at all the evidence, right, that we
Right.
presented today, it's not necessary. No. Right. There's no health benefit.
No.
There's no. I mean, and even now looking at it, I think things are going to keep evolving, but I think there's going to be some pushback from the alcohol industry, though. But I will tell you that all these zero alcohol options, you see the alcohol industry embracing them.
Yeah.
Budweiser,
There's more and more.
Peroni, Heineken, right? I don't even know who the owners of these companies are. But you go, like I went to the store called Total Wine & More in Charlotte yesterday, and bay after bay after bay is filled with non-alcohol options now, right? That probably didn't exist 2 years ago.
Right. No, because people are really, really, I think, embracing a healthier lifestyle in today's world, because they're educated. There's so much information out there, like now with podcasts like we do. So much great information. Doctors, like really good doctors, people like Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman with Huberman's Lab, and Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. I mean, Stacy Sims. So many people are just really advocating for a healthier lifestyle. No one's saying don't drink, but if you are having a healthy lifestyle, you're eating right, you're exercising, and you're doing all the things to keep yourself healthy, alcohol's kind of going to fade away because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't let you perform. You're not going to perform the way you want to perform in all areas of life and you're going to feel the difference.
Oh, I do. I feel a difference. I feel more clear-headed. It's easier to get. Well, number one, we didn't talk about sleep, but hopefully most people know that alcohol causes sleep disturbance. I sleep so much better. Yeah. I get so much better, more restful sleep, more deep sleep, more REM sleep, and I'm feeling much more refreshed the next day. So, I mean, why? Yeah, why? Why do I need to do that to myself?
If I drank, I could never get up early and work out the way I do.
You know what concerns me, and then we'll wrap up, is the fact that people need a buzz, right? So
It's an escape.
What I was really surprised about when I went to the store yesterday, there was like 4 bays or whatever of THC infused options. So instead of alcohol, it was like a beer or a vodka or a seltzer or whatever that had THC in it. So you're getting hemp like you're eating a gummy, and I don't know why I didn't think this was possible. So instead of eating a gummy, you're drinking what tastes like a beer that has the effect of a gummy. So I'm not sure. I haven't studied the health effects on this, but now I'm concerned because
I think it doesn't affect the development of your brain.
It's not really regulated. It probably does. And
it's not.
Are our kids now drinking? Our kids, whoever you and I, other
young
parents,
adults,
right? Are they now drinking this as an option, thinking, "Hey, this is great because I'm not drinking alcohol anymore, but now I'm drinking THC infused"? I don't know. And so, because I think, you have to separate from, am I just trying to get buzzed, but I want to say I'm not drinking alcohol, but now I'm going to go and do something else that maybe has harmful. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't want to. I haven't done any research on this. Maybe we'll do another podcast on THC infused products, but that's the thing. It's the question mark I have in my head, because even I was looking. It's like, well, if I drink a THC beer, is that okay? Is that going to affect my AFib? But then I said, why do I need to get buzzed?
So I will say this: I have a child.
Yeah.
Well, not a child. It's an adult. I have an adult.
Child, yes, adult child, young adult.
Who's a young adult who's 20 years old, and they tried a gummy, and had a severe reaction to it, and really we'll never do it again.
Right.
But I know the fact that they're not regulated, I think to your point, has a lot to do with it, because what was different about this gummy that they took that time that they got really sick, literally threw up everywhere, freaking out, like really just, it was a bad situation. And they were frightened. They got really, really scared.
Yeah. Well,
They didn't want to be, they were like, I don't want to feel like this anymore.
Yeah. Who does?
Yeah. So, and that wasn't the first time. They had dabbled, they had pieces of it before and did it. And, you can buy it in the local store. It's not illegal. But this one time, whatever was in it, they're not regulated, and you don't know what you're getting.
Yeah.
And, people have had, have people died? I think we read somebody had stuff that's not supposed to be in it, like some kind of.
Yeah, and so that's what bothers me. I was looking, because I'm getting inundated with advertising. I don't know what my phone is doing to pick up on all this, but now I'm getting inundated with these things that are basically saying you can get the buzz without the negative health effects. I'm like, is that true?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think these statements are approved or condoned.
Yeah, and there's a cost.
I don't want to advocate. I just want to be clear as we end this podcast that I'm not saying that we should just, boom. But so hopefully everybody watching found this helpful and useful, and this podcast was in alignment with our purpose, right? Yeah,
I would say it's January 1st. So if you are someone who's been considering stopping drinking, and it's been something that's been problematic for you, and you feel like you want to make a change, there's 5 things that you can consider to do a dry January, right? It can cause AFib. There's no amount of safe drinking. Drinking alcohol does not directly improve any cardiovascular health, studies are shown. It even moderately takes time off your life with each drink. And there are plenty of great zero-drink alcohol options. So try that.
Thank you.
And follow me.
Follow us.
Follow us.
We're a team here.
That's right.
There's no I in team. All right. Well, have a happy new year, and we'll talk to you all next time.
All right. Happy New Year.